Imagine waking up tomorrow in a life stripped of chaos, a reality where clutter vanishes, stress fades, and clarity takes center stage. What if ancient secrets could empower you to withstand life's storms with unshakable calm, while freeing yourself from the endless cycle of buying, owning, and worrying? In today's world of burnout, anxiety, and constant digital overload, the timeless wisdom of minimalism and Stoicism offers a powerful antidote. But how exactly can two philosophies born centuries apart transform your daily experience into something deeply meaningful? Stay until the end of this video to witness incredible real-life transformations, surprising truths, and practical strategies that just might change your life forever. And if you're ready to unlock the blueprint to simplicity and inner strength, hit subscribe now. Your journey to intentional living starts right here. Imagine rising at dawn in a space imbued with serenity, where every object in sight has a place and a purpose. There is an uncluttered desk, a chair that feels just right, and a few cherished items that evoke inspiration rather than distraction. Your mind, free from the usual barrage of scattered thoughts, feels clear and receptive. Such is the promise of minimalism, a lifestyle that aims to strip away superfluous possessions and commitments so that your mental, emotional, and physical worlds can breathe. Yet, beyond this image of neat surfaces and curated belongings, minimalism offers a deeper transformation. It challenges you to ask why you own what you own, and how your daily choices shape the life you live. Now, envision facing life's storms, from disappointments at work to personal tragedies. With a resilient heart, you remain centered, recognizing that although you cannot control every external event, you hold power over your own thoughts, values, and actions. This seemingly calm and steady posture in the face of uncertainty is at the heart of Stoicism, a philosophy birthed in ancient Greece that emphasizes reason, virtue, and the discipline of letting go of what we cannot change. Though minimalism and Stoicism were conceived in different eras and under vastly different social conditions, they converge on a common ground: the art of letting go for the sake of a more meaningful life. When you examine the essence of both philosophies, you notice a shared directive to simplify, not merely for the sake of owning fewer things or wearing an impassive expression, but to make space for what is essential, virtuous, and genuinely fulfilling. In a world rife with noise, consumerist pressures, and rapid technological advancement, rediscovering this sense of simplicity can be revolutionary. It can offer a sense of peace, clarity, and moral grounding that transcends the tyranny of accumulating more stuff or being perpetually at the mercy of shifting external forces. The modern minimalism movement gained traction in the early 2000s, propelled by popular blogs, documentaries, and books that questioned the culture of relentless consumption. People began to notice that their homes, once places of refuge, had become storage units for rarely used gadgets, unread books, and piles of items that no longer served a real purpose. Rather than feeling content, many felt burdened. Minimalism promised relief, urging a thorough decluttering not just of physical items but also of digital clutter, overwhelming schedules, and unhealthy commitments. Almost simultaneously, Stoicism experienced its own revival. Modern thinkers, corporate leaders, and wellness advocates found value in the Stoic practice of focusing on what one can control, one's reactions, attitudes, and ethical choices, and detaching from what one cannot control, such as external setbacks or random misfortunes. This emphasis on personal agency resonated with a generation increasingly aware of mental health challenges, workplace stressors, and social pressures, amplified by the digital age. Taken together, minimalism and Stoicism present a powerful roadmap for living. Pare down what is unnecessary, both in the realm of the material and the emotional, and harness your energies toward what truly matters. The synergy of these two approaches forms the framework for our discussion. Across 3 parts, We will explore 1. The foundations of minimalism, 2. The depths of Stoicism, and 3. How to integrate both, along with insights from Eastern traditions, into a cohesive lifestyle that fosters clarity, ethical conviction, and deep contentment. By journey's end, you will see that letting go is not about deprivation. It is about creating the conditions for genuine fulfillment. When burdens are cast aside, whether they are boxes in the garage or anxieties in the mind, we reclaim the space to live with intention, to form deeper connections, and to stand tall amid life's trials. Before we delve deeper, it's useful to situate minimalism in its broader historical and cultural context. Although minimalism as a lifestyle movement surged in popularity during the late 20th and early 21st centuries, its roots can be traced back to the mid-20th century art world. Influential painters and sculptors of that era broke away from complex, ornate styles, opting instead for clean lines, monochromatic color schemes, and purposeful use of space. Their works invited the viewer to slow down and pay attention to form, texture, and negative space. This approach challenged the assumption that good art must be grandiose or overly detailed. Music soon followed a parallel track, with composers such as Philip Glass and Steve Reich producing minimalistic compositions that repeated simple motifs, enabling listeners to experience a meditative quality through sustained focus. Over time, the aesthetic and philosophical dimensions of minimalism began to spill over into architecture, interior design, and ultimately into personal lifestyle choices. By the time the early 2000s arrived, global consumer culture had reached a fever pitch, supported by easy credit, expansive marketing, and the rise of e-commerce. New products were being introduced at a relentless pace, and social media platforms magnified the desire to keep up with trends. Many households found themselves burdened by credit card debts, cluttered living areas, and a nagging feeling of spiritual emptiness. In response, popular voices, authors, bloggers, and documentarians urged a reconsideration of the entire cultural obsession with more. They posited that joy, connection, and self-discovery might be found by paring down to the essentials. A new wave of minimalists advocated for a life stripped of unnecessary possessions, fostering mental clarity, creativity, and the luxury of time to focus on genuine priorities. Beneath these modern expressions lies an even older current of thought. Throughout history, spiritual traditions have admonished followers to be wary of material excess. Early Christian monastic orders, for instance, extolled the virtues of poverty, simplicity, and ascetic living as a means to deepen faith. In certain Buddhist practices, renunciation of excessive attachments to worldly goods is central to pursuing enlightenment. Though not typically labeled as minimalist, these ancient teachings highlight common themes: an understanding that too many possessions, or too strong an attachment to them, can enslave the spirit, scatter the mind, and hamper true liberation. Contemporary minimalism, therefore, is not an isolated trend that popped up out of nowhere. It rests on layers of artistic, cultural, and spiritual antecedents. What separates it from past expressions is its explicit focus on addressing the modern consumerist problem. Minimalist living is not merely a statement about aesthetics. Today, minimalism is applied to everything from wardrobe choices, capsule closets that feature a small number of high-quality items, to digital footprints where email inboxes are purged regularly, social media usage is curtailed, and streaming services are carefully curated. The overarching aim is not simply to own fewer things, but to own better relationships with one's surroundings, responsibilities, and inner life. Thus, minimalism emerges as both a critique of consumer culture and a personal experiment in purposeful living. At its core, it is a call to awareness. If you have ever held an item in your hand and wondered, "Why do I even have this?" or found yourself scrolling through social media feeling empty, you've already touched on the questions minimalists ask daily. This is the gateway to a broader inquiry. What do I value most in my life? The answers can lead you to create a space, both physically and psychologically, where your energies are directed toward genuine passions, relationships, and experiences. This is the stepping stone to letting go of the material burdens that weigh heavily on our well-being. With this historical canvas in mind, let's delve into the three foundational pillars of minimalism that shape its modern practice: simplification, intentionality, and focus on quality over quantity. First, simplification addresses the practical side of minimalism, removing clutter, organizing spaces, and cutting back on commitments that consume energy without yielding meaningful returns. In practice, this often begins as a tangible process: cleaning out a closet, donating books you no longer read, or canceling subscriptions that you barely use. But simplification also extends to other aspects of life. Think of how you use your time. Are you constantly rushing from one obligation to another? Do you have countless notifications lighting up your phone? By simplifying these areas, you establish a baseline of calm, a blank canvas on which you can more carefully paint the essentials of your life. Second, intentionality is the philosophical engine that propels minimalism. Instead of going on autopilot and accumulating items or habits out of convenience, peer pressure, or sheer inattentiveness, intentionality urges you to question and choose with clarity. It is about probing each possession, engagement, or relationship to ensure it serves a meaningful function or aligns with your deepest values. For instance, when you think of buying a new piece of clothing, minimalism encourages you to pause and ask, is this item necessary? Does it reflect my style and ethical considerations? Will it last, or is it disposable? That simple line of questioning can trickle down to all areas of life, providing a filter that helps you separate what is truly beneficial from what is extraneous. The third pillar, a focus on quality over quantity, further refines the minimalist ethos. Minimalism does not inherently demand living with as few possessions as possible. Rather, it asserts that each possession should be significant, purposeful, and durable. This stands in stark contrast to the prevalent consumer culture, where impulse buying and planned obsolescence result in an endless cycle of acquisition and disposal. By opting for quality items, whether it's a well-made coat that lasts for years, or a single, robust cast-iron pan that replaces multiple flimsy alternatives, you reduce waste, minimize clutter, and often make more cost-efficient choices over the long term. Moreover, focusing on quality extends beyond material goods to relationships and personal endeavors, encouraging you to invest your time and emotional energy in people and projects that truly matter. Taken together, these three principles form a matrix that supports a minimalist lifestyle. In an age of information overload and relentless marketing, simplification acts as your shield against the deluge of stuff. Intentionality becomes the compass that keeps you aligned with your values, and a focus on quality protects you from slipping back into quantity-based thinking that rarely satisfies. Each principle also carries the implicit message of liberation. Liberation from the myth that more is always better, from the stress of constant comparison, and from the guilt of owning things that seldom bring you joy. Instead, you create mental space for gratitude, cultivate clearer priorities, and transform your living environment into a sanctuary that mirrors your true self. Adopting these minimalist principles can yield a rich tapestry of benefits. One of the most immediate and evident rewards is mental clarity. By reducing physical clutter and the constant background buzz of obligations, your mind can focus more efficiently. Research in psychology often points to how an overly cluttered environment raises stress levels, distracts your thought processes, and can lead to a sense of overwhelm. Conversely, when your surroundings are orderly and reflect only what you cherish or need, the brain tends to relax. You might find creativity sparking anew, or finally experience the calm to address deeper personal projects you've long postponed. Another pivotal benefit is financial freedom. Minimalism's call for intentionality in spending naturally translates to fewer impulsive purchases and less accumulation of debt. Instead, you learn to direct resources toward experiences or items that genuinely enrich your life. Over time, these choices can lead to a healthier financial state, more robust savings, and even the possibility of earlier retirement or career flexibility. Far from advocating for frugality alone, the financial aspect of minimalism highlights the value of thoughtful investing. Whether that investment is in a community, a personal hobby, or an ethical product that supports sustainable production and fair labor practices. Moreover, minimalism can positively influence your environmental footprint. Reducing consumption decreases the demand for resources, lowers waste, and curtails carbon emissions associated with manufacturing, shipping, and disposal of goods. In this sense, minimalism aligns with a broader environmental consciousness, appealing to those who wish to tread more lightly on the planet. Such environmental benefits amplify when communities collectively adopt minimalist principles, reinforcing a culture of reuse, repair, and mindful buying. Yet, as compelling as these advantages are, minimalism has faced its share of criticisms and misconceptions. One criticism is that minimalism can appear elitist or classist. Some argue that the ability to choose less is itself a privilege not available to people facing economic hardship. For individuals struggling to afford basic necessities, the notion of paring down possessions may seem irrelevant or even tone-deaf. In response, leading voices in minimalism often clarify that the philosophy is not about achieving an aesthetic of stark emptiness or forcing a universal standard on everyone, but rather about encouraging a thoughtful approach to consumption that can be adapted to various socioeconomic circumstances. A second criticism is that minimalism sometimes morphs into yet another competitive trend, ironically promoting a sort of consumption of minimalism. Through designer furniture, premium organizational tools, or meticulously curated social media feeds, showcasing immaculate spaces. This phenomenon, sometimes pejoratively referred to as minimalist consumerism, misses the ethos of living with less by focusing on how to portray a perfect image of simplicity. It is crucial, therefore, to distinguish between genuine minimalism, which is anchored in personal values and conscious decisions, and a mere aesthetic trend that can become a new avenue for conspicuous consumption. Lastly, there is the misconception that minimalism is about living a life of austerity, devoid of personality or comfort. Critics might imagine a barren, all-white living space devoid of personal touches. However, many who practice minimalism emphasize that it need not be sterile or lifeless. On the contrary, a minimalist home can be warm and inviting if it's filled only with belongings that hold deep meaning or serve a practical need. The same principle applies to emotional and social dimensions of life. Minimalism asks you to pare away only what fails to add real value, so you have more bandwidth for meaningful relationships, hobbies, and self-care rituals. In light of these varying perspectives, it's helpful to remember that minimalism is not a fixed end state, but rather a continuous, evolving practice. Think of it like tending a garden. Even when you've pulled out the weeds once, they can still creep back if neglected. Similarly, possessions and obligations, if not kept in check, can proliferate over time. This is why practitioners often view minimalism as an ongoing journey of self-discovery. Each new phase of life, starting a family, changing careers, relocating, brings a need to reevaluate what you own and how you spend your time. It is this cyclical process of reflection and adjustment that keeps minimalism from becoming stagnant or dogmatic. Furthermore, minimalism encourages a shift in perspective that goes beyond personal gain. When you become accustomed to buying less and valuing resources more, you may find your empathy for others sharpened. You start to see how collective overconsumption contributes to global inequalities, environmental damage, and a culture of disposability. This realization can inspire acts of giving, volunteering, or supporting organizations that address the root causes of these problems. Thus, minimalism has the potential not just to transform individual lives, but also to spark broader social consciousness. Despite its growing influence, minimalism is by no means universal nor a panacea. It is, however, a valuable tool, one that can be adapted to individual tastes, cultural contexts, and economic conditions. For some, minimalism might mean living with under 100 items or keeping a purely monochrome wardrobe. For others, it may involve a more moderate reduction of possessions and an emphasis on creating an open, welcoming home. The common thread is a clear-eyed approach to what you let occupy your physical and mental space. In the same vein, minimalism often leads to a redefinition of success. In a consumer-driven society, success is frequently measured by the quantity of your possessions, the size of your home, or the brand of your car. But as many minimalists discover, letting go of extraneous possessions can coincide with letting go of extraneous definitions of success. Instead, success might be re-envisioned as having the freedom to pursue creative passions, the time to nurture relationships, or the ability to align one's life more closely with ethical or spiritual values. This reframing can be deeply liberating, as it rescues your self-worth from external benchmarks and grounds it in your own authenticity. Thus, minimalism at its heart is a philosophy of alignment, aligning what you own with who you aspire to be, aligning your daily decisions with your deeper values, and aligning your use of resources with a broader sense of social and ecological responsibility. It sets the stage for a life where you are not constantly juggling or distracted, but rather engaged and purposeful. In our increasingly complex modern world, such alignment can act as an anchor of stability, and yet, minimalism alone addresses only part of the human condition. Most notably, our relationship to external objects and demands. To complete the puzzle, we must look inward to examine how we handle adversity, maintain ethical steadiness, and cultivate mental fortitude. This is where Stoicism enters the stage. Before we move into a full exploration of Stoicism in the next part, let us briefly set the stage for how minimalism and Stoicism naturally intertwine. Minimalism, as we have seen, involves physical and practical decluttering. It addresses the external, tangible aspects of our existence and encourages us to refine our environment and daily routines. But even in the most immaculately curated space, negative emotions, anxieties, and destructive thought patterns can persist. No matter how orderly your closet or how curated your digital subscriptions, internal turmoil can still cast a shadow on your well-being. This is where Stoicism becomes a complementary force. Stoicism shifts the focus inward, teaching that while we cannot control external events, be they natural disasters, economic downturns, or other people's behaviors, we can indeed refine our perceptions and reactions. Just as minimalism prompts us to question every item we bring into our living space, Stoicism prompts us to question every assumption, emotional reflex, or desire that arises within us. The goal is not to stifle emotion or live joylessly, but to cultivate a kind of emotional intelligence and moral clarity that remains stable regardless of external upheavals. Interestingly, both philosophies converge on the idea of letting go. In minimalism, you let go of items that no longer serve a meaningful purpose. In Stoicism, you let go of illusions that external circumstances can dictate your inner peace. Both share the notion that liberation, be it from clutter or mental anguish, arises when you acknowledge what is within your power, your choices, your judgments, and what is not, external events, the opinions of others. By recognizing and releasing what does not truly belong to you, whether it's an abandoned gym membership or needless worry over another person's criticism, you reclaim agency over your life. Furthermore, both minimalism and Stoicism pivot on the concept of value. For minimalists, value might mean utility, durability, or personal significance. For Stoics, value is rooted in virtue, the cultivation of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. When these perspectives merge, a unique synergy emerges. You begin to see that your material environment can be an extension of your moral and psychological environment. A possession that aligns with your virtues or fosters a sense of purpose has genuine value. One that encourages vanity, envy, or waste detracts from your growth. In this way, minimalism's call to keep only what is worthwhile resonates deeply with Stoicism's call to pursue what is morally good. This synergy lays a powerful foundation for personal development. By embracing minimalism, you create the external conditions, less stuff, fewer distractions, simpler routines, that facilitate introspection and self-mastery. By studying Stoicism, you refine the internal mindset necessary to handle life's inevitable challenges and remain grounded in ethical living. In the next part, we'll turn our attention fully to Stoicism, tracing its roots to ancient Athens, following its evolution in Roman thought, and examining how its key tenets of rationality, control over reactions, and virtue as the highest good continue to inspire countless individuals to this day. There, we'll explore how Stoic philosophy can serve as a bulwark against adversity and an anchor of purpose, paving the way toward a life guided by both practical simplicity and unwavering inner fortitude. As we conclude the first part of our exploration, take a moment to reflect on how minimalism might already be echoing in your own life. Perhaps you felt the urge to pare down your closet, or you've noticed how your mind seems to lighten after you tidy your workspace. Maybe you've recognized that some of your purchases were fueled by impulse or social expectations rather than genuine need. These small realizations are like open doors, beckoning you to explore what life could look and feel like with fewer physical burdens and more mental clarity. The act of letting go, even of something as mundane as old magazines or an outdated electronic device, can evoke a surprising sense of liberation, offering a preview of the spaciousness that minimalism promises. And yet, minimalism is not just about you, it's also about how your personal choices reverberate outward, affecting your community, your planet, and future generations. By choosing to consume less, you contribute to a culture that values thoughtfulness over impulsivity, sustainability over waste, and meaning over status. In this sense, each decluttering decision becomes an ethical one, a statement that says, "I will not allow material objects to dominate my life or overshadow my values." Having established this foundation, we are now prepared to widen our gaze and examine the ancient wisdom of Stoicism. If minimalism can be seen as a scalpel that carves away physical and digital clutter, Stoicism is the compass that guides our moral and emotional direction. Together, they form a comprehensive blueprint for living meaningfully and enduring hardships with grace. In Part 2, we will travel to the bustling environs of ancient Athens and Rome, where Stoicism took shape in the teachings of Zeno of Citium, Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius. We'll learn about the dichotomy of control, the importance of reason, and the path toward virtue that Stoicism heralds. As you transition to the next part, consider what you truly seek from life. Is it more freedom, greater peace of mind, or a sense of alignment with your highest values? Minimalism offers tangible practices to begin that journey: clearing space, eliminating distractions and questioning the purpose behind each possession. Stoicism will soon offer an inner dimension to match, showing how mental discipline and moral fortitude can keep us steady in a world that is anything but. By the end of our collective exploration, you may find yourself with a renewed vision for your life, one that is simpler in appearance yet immeasurably richer in substance. Let us now step into the world of ancient philosophy to uncover how Stoicism's timeless insights can merge seamlessly with minimalism's focus on the essentials, guiding us all toward a life of genuine meaning, resilience, and well-being. Stoicism's story begins in the busy heart of ancient Athens around the early 3rd century BCE, a time when the city was still a vibrant center of philosophical inquiry even as the golden age of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle was waning. The founder of this school, Zeno of Citium, was inspired by Cynic philosophers who advocated an austere, virtue-fainted existence. However, Zeno's vision diverged from pure cynicism by proposing that individuals could live in harmony with society and still pursue moral excellence. He began teaching his philosophy in the Stoa Poikile, the painted porch, a public colonnade from which the name Stoicism derives. In these open-air sessions, discussion of ethics, logic, and the nature of the universe thrived, and Stoicism slowly gained popularity as a way of life that promised peace of mind and moral fortitude. Over time, Stoicism evolved and reached its intellectual zenith during the Roman era, as evidenced by the writings of 3 luminaries, Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. Each of these figures lived under very different circumstances, but upheld core Stoic tenets with remarkable consistency. Seneca, a statesman and playwright, grappled with political intrigue during the reign of Emperor Nero, using Stoic thought to craft letters and essays on managing anger, facing death, and finding purpose. Epictetus, once a slave, rose to prominence as a teacher whose conversations compiled by his student Arrian into the Discourses and the Enchiridion articulated the central idea of freedom through mastery over one's mind. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor of Rome, penned his Meditations as private reflections on the Stoic virtues of reason, temperance, and duty in the midst of wartime challenges. Amid their diverse backgrounds, these thinkers shared one resounding message: true contentment and moral flourishing are not found in external circumstances, but in the cultivation of one's inner character and rational capacities. This stance set Stoicism apart from philosophies that locate happiness in material wealth, social accolades, or sensual pleasure. The Stoics argued that while external conditions can be pleasant or painful, they do not touch the core of what truly matters, the moral agent within. Consequently, Stoicism offered a potent framework for facing adversity. Whether the adversity is the threat of exile, the pains of physical hardship, or the daily frustrations of interpersonal conflict, Stoicism teaches that we can remain centered by focusing on what lies within our control, our judgments, our intentions, and our actions. Crucially, Stoicism did not merely rest on theoretical foundations but required ongoing practice. For the Stoics, philosophy was an exercise, a way of training the mind and will, akin to how an athlete trains the body. Practices such as daily reflection, journaling, self-diagnosals, and mental rehearsals of challenging scenarios were all recommended. By continuously reaffirming the tenets of rational thinking and self-discipline, Stoics aimed to forge an unshakable tranquility that no amount of external upheaval could spoil. When viewed through a modern lens, Stoicism's emphasis on self-mastery has clear parallels with cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which also teaches patients to scrutinize and alter destructive thought patterns. Corporate leaders invoke Stoic principles to remain calm under pressure, and life coaches often suggest Stoic techniques for coping with stress, reframing negative events, and maintaining long-term goals, rather than being an arcane relic of antiquity. Stoicism's core ideas on ethical living, emotional regulation, and logical reasoning continue to resonate with pressing contemporary needs. As we proceed, we will uncover the bedrock principles that animate Stoicism, highlighting how they can help us detach from unproductive anxieties, become more resilient, and live in greater harmony with our deeper values. Stoicism stands on three major pillars: rationality, the dichotomy of control, and virtue as the highest good. Understanding these pillars clarifies why Stoicism continues to inspire people across eras and cultures. Rationality. Stoics upheld that the universe operates according to a rational order, sometimes referred to as the logos. As part of this rational cosmos, human beings have the innate capacity for reason, setting them apart from animals governed primarily by instinct. Stoics believe that by honing our rational faculties, we can interpret external events accurately, avoid irrational fears or desires, and align our actions with the natural flow of the universe. In practical terms, this means replacing knee-jerk reactions with thoughtful responses. When confronted with a setback, a missed promotion, or a fractured relationship, a Stoic approach asks us to reflect. Is my emotional turmoil stemming from the event itself, or from my interpretation of the event? Often it is the latter, which means that by adjusting our perspective, we can mitigate our distress. The dichotomy of control, one of Stoicism's most powerful teachings, is the recognition that while some things are within our control, others lie outside it. Epictetus famously stated, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." This simple yet profound insight instructs us to focus energy on what we can influence, our thoughts, judgments, decisions, and relinquish anxiety over what we cannot, other people's opinions, the weather, or the arbitrary twists of fate. Mastering this distinction fosters emotional resilience. We learn to detach from outcomes that are never fully guaranteed, pouring our effort instead into virtuous action. In essence, it's an invitation to direct one's will where it can be most effective, avoiding the misery of trying to control the uncontrollable. Virtue as the highest good. The Stoics maintained that genuine happiness, often termed eudaimonia or flourishing, arises from living in accordance with virtue, specifically wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. These cardinal virtues form a moral compass guiding every decision. From a Stoic viewpoint, external goods like wealth, reputation, or pleasure are considered indifferent, meaning they are neither inherently good nor bad. What matters is how we use them. A wealthy person can be unvirtuous if their fortune fuels greed or corruption. Conversely, someone with modest means can be profoundly virtuous if they use their limited resources ethically and remain steadfast in moral convictions. By framing happiness in terms of moral integrity rather than transient externalities, Stoicism offers a roadmap for inner stability, even in dire circumstances. Imprisonment, illness, bereavement. A Stoic strives to live rightly, confident that true worth lies in character, not in external conditions. When these three pillars converge in action, they produce a life anchored in equanimity. Adhering to rational thinking wards off impulsive or destructive emotional swings. Recognizing the dichotomy of control liberates us from the futile attempt to micromanage our environment. Upholding virtue as the paramount goal provides a North Star for ethical decision-making. The result is a sense of calm that persists in the face of hardship, a mindset not dispassionate in a cold robotic sense, but clear-eyed and unshakably principled. Stoics thus learn to confront life's inevitable misfortunes without succumbing to despair or resentment. In the upcoming paragraphs, we'll investigate how to practically apply these principles in everyday life and how they resonate with or differ from minimalism's call to simplify our external environment. A cornerstone of Stoicism's approach to life is its capacity to reframe adversity. While minimalism addresses a material and logistical form of decluttering, Stoicism is effectively about emotional and cognitive decluttering. Both philosophies hinge on the idea that we often burden ourselves unnecessarily. Minimalism points to physical clutter, while Stoicism points to mental clutter, unexamined assumptions, misguided fears, and lingering resentments. By systematically questioning these internal accumulations, Stoicism teaches us to replace reactive emotions with measured. For instance, consider an everyday annoyance. You get stuck in a traffic jam on your commute, running late for an important meeting. A typical reaction might involve stress, anger, or frantic worry, none of which actually improves the situation. A Stoic approach begins with acknowledging that traffic is outside your control. No matter how forcefully you wish it away, external events unfold according to factors you cannot influence in that moment. What you can control is your perspective. You might decide to use the time to practice mindful breathing, reflect on the meeting agenda, or take the opportunity to make a quick phone call, hands-free of course, to reschedule if necessary. By consciously reframing the event, you avoid the emotional toll of anger or despair, and you emerge from the setback with your composure intact. In a more profound example, Stoicism's power shines through in times of personal crisis, illness, job loss, relationship breakdown, or bereavement. Seneca wrote extensively on how to prepare mentally for adversity so that when it arrives, it does not shatter us. A Stoic might plan worst-case scenario exercises, not out of pessimism, but to train the mind to remain steady if the worst does come to pass. This exercise parallels the minimalist practice of letting go of extraneous just-in-case items. Both can feel uncomfortable. Letting go of a rarely used possession might provoke a fear of, what if I need it someday? Similarly, contemplating the possibility of personal loss can feel morbid. But for Stoics, mentally rehearsing adversity serves to remind us of life's transient nature, which in turn fosters a deeper appreciation for the present moment. Another notable concept is the Stoic practice of self-reflection, often akin to journaling or silent contemplation at the end of each day. Marcus Aurelius famously questioned his own motives and actions in his meditations, seeking to align them with reason and virtue. This habitual reflection offers a quiet, internal space to sift through the day's events, identify areas where we acted impulsively or out of alignment with our values, and chart a more mindful path forward. Minimalism has a parallel in the routine habit of keeping spaces tidy. Rather than waiting for clutter to build up, a daily practice of tidying helps maintain order. So too does Stoic reflection serve as a mental tidying, preventing resentments, regrets, and fears from piling up in our consciousness. When adversity is reframed from being a purely negative force to becoming an opportunity for growth and virtue, Stoicism showcases its transformative potential. It is not about denying pain or tragedy, but about refusing to amplify suffering through panic, bitterness, or blame. Like minimalism, Stoicism champions the freeing act of discarding what no longer serves a constructive purpose, be it old possessions or counterproductive mental scripts. Through these processes of letting go, we gain a lighter, more deliberate approach to living, unburdened, focused, and prepared to meet life as it unfolds. Fast forward to the modern era, and you'll find that Stoicism has quietly permeated various facets of contemporary culture. Therapists and counselors draw parallels between Epictetus's notion of examining our beliefs and the foundational strategies of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which encourages patients to identify and challenge distorted thought patterns. Life coaches and self-improvement gurus adopt Stoic strategies when advising clients to focus on controllables in pursuit of personal goals. Stoic philosophies also appear in corporate leadership. Executives reference Marcus Aurelius as a model for leading with equanimity, focusing on moral duty rather than external validation. Even in professional sports, athletes adopt Stoic techniques to maintain composure under pressure, concentrating on execution rather than being weighed down by the immensity of a match or race. Social media has further played a role in Stoicism's resurgence, as short, pithy quotes from Seneca or Marcus Aurelius circulate widely, capturing the imaginations of people seeking spiritual or psychological anchors in a tumultuous world. However, a superficial reliance on Stoic quotes can sometimes oversimplify the depth and rigor of the philosophy. The real power of Stoicism lies in sustained practice, ongoing self-reflection, and a willingness to confront one's own ego and flaws. Just as minimalism is more than having a sparse living room, Stoicism is more than sharing an ancient aphorism. It involves a lifetime of deliberate character development. Despite its growing popularity, Stoicism faces criticisms and misunderstandings. One common misconception is that Stoics are unfeeling or detached to the point of apathy. Popular culture might reinforce this image of the Stoic hero as emotionless and aloof. In truth, the Stoics acknowledged that emotions are part of the human experience, but they argued for regulating destructive emotions through reason rather than being governed by them. They prize balance and self-control, not emotional numbness. Another critique is that Stoicism can be interpreted as a passive acceptance of injustice, encouraging people to endure rather than resist harmful social or political structures. Yet many Stoic texts underscore the virtue of justice, a call to act ethically in the face of wrongdoing. Stoics do not advocate resignation to moral ills, but suggest that one's actions should be grounded in virtue rather than reactive anger or despair. Furthermore, Stoicism's emphasis on self-reliance has sometimes been seen as too individualistic. Some question whether it pays sufficient attention to community, relationships, and collective well-being. However, Marcus Aurelius reminds us frequently of our duties to society, emphasizing that humans are social beings designed to help one another. A Stoic approach need not be solitary. It can be deeply communal, guiding individuals to uphold justice and support others through thoughtful, ethical engagement rather than impulsive or self-centered behaviors. These debates highlight Stoicism's continued relevance and complexity. It is a philosophy open to interpretation and adaptation, yet anchored in time-tested ideas about human psychology and moral aspiration. Because Stoicism addresses universal questions, how to handle loss, how to remain upright amidst adversity, how to define a good life, it remains a potent lens through which modern individuals can navigate personal and societal challenges. Combined with minimalism's emphasis on purposeful living, Stoicism can add ethical depth and emotional resilience to a lifestyle already freed from unnecessary material burdens. In the next paragraphs, we'll examine where these two philosophies dovetail and where they part ways, illuminating how each can bolster the other in a quest for a more meaningful existence. Having explored the core of minimalism, Part 1, and the essence of Stoicism, earlier in Part 2, we now arrive at the critical juncture where these two philosophies intersect. While they originated in different historical contexts, mid to late 20th century aesthetic and cultural shifts for minimalism and ancient Greco-Roman thought for Stoicism, they converge on simplicity and the art of letting go. Both address the question, what do I genuinely need for a good life? Minimalism answers with a call to pare down physical possessions and obligations, while Stoicism responds by urging moderation in emotional attachments and external dependencies. One of the key similarities is how both foster clarity. Minimalism maintains that an uncluttered environment leads to a less chaotic mind. Stoicism maintains that an uncluttered mind, one freed from toxic emotions and futile worries, leads to a more tranquil and ethically sound existence. Together, they reinforce the idea that contentment arises not from endless accumulation, whether of objects or achievements, but from a judicious acceptance of limits and a focus on what truly matters. Another parallel is in their practice-oriented nature. Minimalism is not merely an idea but a series of actions, decluttering a room, streamlining a schedule, choosing quality over quantity. Similarly, Stoicism is also an active practice, daily mental exercises, reflection, and the consistent challenging of one's emotional triggers. Despite these shared groundings, minimalism and Stoicism differ in scope. Minimalism primarily addresses external aspects of life, although it has implications for mental well-being. Its main thrust is reorganizing or reducing physical possessions and daily commitments. Stoicism, conversely, delves deeply into the internal workings of character, rationality, and moral behavior. This difference in focus can complement rather than conflict. Minimalism sets the stage by removing external noise, while Stoicism refines the internal dialogue. Another difference lies in their motivations. Minimalism often presents itself as a response to consumer culture, environmental concerns, and personal well-being. Stoicism, rooted in ancient philosophy, frames its pursuit in terms of living according to nature, honing virtue, and achieving a state of inner freedom. The Stoic impetus is profoundly ethical, whereas minimalism can remain more utilitarian, though of course many minimalists are ethically motivated by issues of sustainability and social responsibility. When combined, these differences and similarities yield a powerful synergy. Imagine a life in which your physical surroundings are carefully curated, free from items that hinder more than help, while your inner world is guided by reason, virtue, and emotional equilibrium. Such a synthesis suggests a twofold liberation, from the tyranny of clutter and from the tyranny of unexamined emotional impulses. The minimalist Stoic understands that letting go of external possessions is incomplete without also letting go of envy, anger, and fear. In turn, the Stoic minimalist recognizes that moral clarity is easier to sustain in an environment that doesn't incessantly vie for attention or feed impulsive desires. Yet merging these philosophies also demands balance. One might be tempted to transform minimalism into an extreme asceticism or to adopt Stoicism in a way that stifles healthy emotional expression. The challenge is to interpret these teachings in a manner that enhances rather than constricts our capacity to engage with the world. After all, a fulfilling life involves not just the absence of clutter or the suppression of emotions, but the presence of meaningful pursuits and relationships. By embracing minimalism's external simplification and Stoicism's internal fortitude, we can cultivate a lifestyle that is robust, compassionate, and resilient. In the final part, we'll examine how these philosophies can be further enriched by insights from Eastern traditions and how you can implement these ideas practically in your daily life. Before we transition to the closing segment of this journey, let's consider real-world examples of how minimalism and Stoicism have been blended by modern practitioners. Take, for instance, the widely recognized duo known as the Minimalists, Joshua Fields Millburn and Ryan Nicodemus. While their work focuses primarily on curating a simpler existence, they also speak of prioritizing experiences over possessions and taking responsibility for one's life choices. Though they do not explicitly label their approach as Stoic, their emphasis on focusing on what matters, embracing limitations, and adjusting your perspective resonates with key Stoic principles. Meanwhile, entrepreneur and author Tim Ferriss has openly discussed how Stoicism informs his decision-making and perspective on adversity. Known for his lifestyle design concept, Ferriss challenges conventional assumptions about work, consumerism, and success. ideas not far removed from minimalism's critique of endless consumption. Stoic ideas appear in his Practice of Fear Setting, a twist on goal setting where one envisions the worst outcomes to manage anxiety and cultivate proactive solutions. This practice mirrors both minimalism's willingness to let go of comfort items and Stoicism's directive to mentally rehearse adversity. Moreover, many digital nomads, individuals who travel the world while working remotely, embody both minimalism and Stoicism, whether they realize it or not. With limited luggage space and a commitment to experiences over possessions, these nomads often live a pared-down, flexible existence. Stoic principles become invaluable when facing the unpredictability of new cultures, visa regulations, or unexpected travel mishaps. Maintaining composure and focusing on controllable factors like one's reactions and preparedness can turn potentially stressful situations into character-building adventures. On a more personal scale, consider someone who decides to downsize from a suburban home to a smaller city apartment, discarding years of accumulated belongings. This minimalist shift spares them hours of cleaning, lowers expenses, and reduces the mental load of managing so many objects. In parallel, if that individual incorporates Stoic practices, morning journaling, daily reflection on virtues, or mental exercises to accept external circumstances, they find themselves better equipped to handle life changes, from job transitions to family disagreements. The synergy between external decluttering and internal resilience fosters a renewed sense of autonomy and clarity. These vignettes illustrate that the intersection of minimalism and Stoicism isn't purely theoretical. It holds tangible implications for how we approach daily life, career choices, personal growth, and relationships. While minimalism helps us organize and lighten our external environment, Stoicism acts as a guiding philosophy for the mind and spirit, ensuring that the newly freed space isn't merely filled with more distractions or anxieties. Instead, it can be dedicated to purposeful living, ethical decision-making, and the pursuit of genuine fulfillment. Thus, the story of minimalism and Stoicism is, at its core, a human story, one of rethinking our default assumptions about stuff and success, and one of reclaiming the power we too often hand over to external forces. Both philosophies remind us that a life well lived is not about how much we own, but about how fully we engage with each day, guided by clear vision and strong moral character. In the final part to come, we'll examine how these Western philosophies find parallels in Eastern thought, and we'll outline practical strategies to weave all of these insights into an integrated approach to life. As Part 2 draws to a close, pause for a moment to consider. What resonates with you most about Stoicism? Are you intrigued by the promise of emotional resilience, or the idea that a life of virtue is more stable and rewarding than a life chasing fleeting gains? Perhaps you find appeal in the notion of focusing on what you can control, letting external events unfold as they will, or you're drawn to the humility in acknowledging that you cannot dictate the behavior of others, but can continuously refine your own attitudes and actions. Reflect, too, on how these ideas might meld with minimalism in your personal circumstances. Maybe you see an opportunity to combine physical decluttering with emotional decluttering, clearing not just your living space of extraneous items but your headspace of extraneous anxieties and grudges. Or perhaps you sense a tension. You admire the Stoic emphasis on self-reliance, but worry about neglecting the communal and relational aspects of life. These reflections are part of the dynamic process of philosophical exploration, adapting ancient wisdom to modern realities. As we step into Part 3, we will broaden our lens to include Eastern philosophies and religions, uncovering parallels that can further deepen our understanding of letting go and living meaningfully. From the Buddhist notion of detachment to Taoist principles of simplicity, from Hindu dharma to Confucian ideals of balance, Eastern traditions echo the fundamental questions: what is essential, and how do I live in harmony with the world around me? In discovering these alignments, we see that minimalism and Stoicism are not alone in their pursuit of simplicity, integrity, and freedom. Rather, they are part of a global tapestry of wisdom that spans centuries and cultures. In the final part, we will also offer practical steps for unifying minimalism, Stoicism, and selected Eastern teachings into a coherent, actionable framework for daily life. From journal prompts to morning rituals, from mindful consumption to ethical decision-making, these practices serve as gateways to a life less burdened by trivialities and more attuned to deeper satisfactions. Our exploration will culminate with a comprehensive reflection on how these philosophies, while distinct, can be woven together to address the universal human longing for purpose, connection, and peace of mind. So let us now conclude Part 2 with anticipation. You have seen how Stoicism addresses the intangible clutter of unchecked emotions and misguided desires. You have observed the synergy that arises when Stoic thought meets the minimalist ethic of careful curation of one's environment. Ahead lies a rich, cross-cultural perspective that enriches both minimalism and Stoicism, shedding further light on how we might live with clarity of mind, virtuous intent, and graceful acceptance of life's ebb and flow. Through this journey, you are invited to become an active participant, testing, refining, and discovering the blend of principles that resonates most deeply with your unique path. Let us continue onward, open to the expansive wisdom that awaits. Having journeyed through minimalism and Stoicism, we now stand at a vantage point to synthesize these ideas with complementary insights from Eastern philosophies. But before immersing ourselves in those traditions, let us first outline a few practical strategies to integrate minimalism and Stoicism in daily life. These approaches form the bridge between theoretical knowledge and concrete action, proving invaluable for anyone who wishes to experience genuine transformation rather than mere intellectual fascination. Start with a declutter challenge. Minimalism: choose one area of your life to simplify, perhaps your wardrobe, kitchen cabinets, or digital apps. Set aside a dedicated block of time to assess each item for its utility or meaning. If it neither enriches your life nor serves a clear purpose, let it go by donating, recycling, or discarding responsibly. Pay attention to how this process makes you feel. Do you experience relief, reluctance, or even guilt? Journaling these reflections can help you unearth your deeper attachments and motivations. Adopt a daily Stoic reflection. As you begin or end each day, spend a few minutes contemplating a key Stoic principle. Say, the dichotomy of control. Ask yourself, what events or outcomes today were within my control, which were not, and how did I respond? This simple practice sharpens awareness and lessens the emotional burden of regretting things you cannot change. Over time, it fosters resilience as you grow accustomed to focusing your energy on constructive action. Practice voluntary discomfort. A Stoic exercise involves occasionally denying oneself a small comfort or convenience to understand how little is truly necessary for well-being. Perhaps you sleep without air conditioning on a mild night, or refrain from an indulgent treat you usually allow yourself. Far from promoting asceticism for its own sake, the purpose is to gain perspective. A minimalist might undertake this experiment by living for a month with only a fraction of their clothes, testing which items are genuinely needed. Through these experiences, you build confidence that your happiness isn't as fragile or dependent on external comforts as you might have believed. Curate your social and digital circles. Minimalism extends beyond physical objects. It can also involve trimming social commitments or digital platforms that drain your energy. Likewise, Stoicism advocates for mindful association. Are there relationships that consistently provoke negativity or hamper your pursuit of virtue? Can you reduce unproductive screen time or limit exposure to media that foments anxiety? By applying both philosophies, you carefully choose who and what occupies your time, ensuring alignment with your values. Set virtue-centered goals. While minimalism champions clarity and Stoicism lauds ethical integrity, you can fuse these by setting goals centered on virtues, wisdom, justice, courage, temperance, rather than purely on external achievements. For example, instead of a typical goal like earn a promotion, you might set an intention like consistently act with honesty and diligence at work, regardless of outcomes. This shift relieves you from chasing a moving target and grounds your ambition in ethical principles. By weaving these practices into your routine, you start to experience firsthand the melding of minimalism's external simplicity and Stoicism's internal steadiness. The point is not to become a rigid disciplinarian or to renounce pleasures, but to cultivate a balanced life where your material surroundings and your mindset mutually reinforce each other's clarity. And when integrated with the broader philosophical tapestry of the East, the result can be a richly textured, globally informed perspective on what it means to live well. Turning our gaze eastward, we find that Buddhism provides a compelling parallel to both minimalism and Stoicism. At the core of Buddhism lie the Four Noble Truths, diagnosing the nature of suffering, dukkha, its causes, tanha or craving, and the path leading to its cessation, the Noble Eightfold Path. One striking resonance with minimalism is the Buddhist emphasis on recognizing how attachment, and by extension overaccumulation, can generate mental distress. The more we cling to possessions or experiences, the more we fear losing them. Minimalism echoes this perspective by advocating for fewer attachments and more intentional relationships with our belongings. Every object in your life can be examined with a Buddhist-like inquiry. Am I holding on to this out of fear or habit? Does it contribute to peace or cause agitation? Buddhism also offers the practice of mindfulness, which dovetails with Stoicism's emphasis on rational self-examination. A mindful state entails being fully present, observing thoughts and feelings as they arise without judgment. Stoic reflection similarly encourages a calm, observational stance toward one's emotions and impulses. Both traditions underscore the difference between experiencing an emotion and being controlled by it. For instance, anger can be felt, recognized, and released, rather than suppressed or exaggerated. This approach complements a minimalist mindset by fostering a mental environment free from needless clutter, emotional reactivity, and swirling anxieties. Moving to Taoism, founded on the writings attributed to Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching, we encounter the concept of the Tao, the natural flow of the universe. Taoist philosophy champions Wu Wei, often translated as non-action or effortless action. Rather than forcing outcomes, one aligns with the Tao by acting in harmony with nature's rhythms. This principle resonates with both minimalism and Stoicism. Minimalism's call to do less but more effectively mirrors Wu Wei. Instead of frenetically chasing more stuff or more activities, you yield to a more organic pace of life. Similarly, Stoicism's dichotomy of control, recognizing what you can and cannot direct, shares common ground with Taoism's admonishment not to swim against the current. By curtailing unnecessary force, you conserve energy for what genuinely matters. Hinduism brings another layer of insight, notably through its concept of Dharma One, one's moral and spiritual duty. At times, fulfilling Dharma might involve renunciation of personal gain, linking to minimalism's rejection of consumerist impulses, or unwavering commitment to justice, in line with Stoicism's emphasis on virtue. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna advises Arjuna to act rightly, without attachment to the fruits of action, reflecting Stoicism's counsel to focus on righteous conduct rather than external results. When you remove the clutter of selfish desire, minimalism again playing a role, you can see your duty more clearly and serve it wholeheartedly. Lastly, Confucianism in East Asia emphasizes relational harmony, ethical conduct, and the doctrine of the mean, favoring moderation in all things. Here, we see echoes of minimalism's measured approach and Stoicism's call to temperance. Confucian thought also values propriety, li, and humaneness, ren, qualities that align with Stoic virtue and minimalism's sense of purposeful living. In effect, each of these Eastern philosophies, in its own way, endorses a form of letting go, of excessive desires, forced actions, or emotional baggage, paralleling the core messages of minimalism and Stoicism. Given these conceptual bridges, it is evident that human wisdom across diverse cultures and time periods frequently gravitates toward simplicity, self-awareness, and ethical living. One might describe this as a shared universal insight, that the chase for endless acquisition, whether of status or possessions, rarely leads to lasting contentment. Instead, contentment emerges from relationships rooted in authenticity, from actions aligned with moral principles, and from a mindful engagement with the present moment. Whether you label it minimalism, Stoicism, Buddhism, Taoism, or any other tradition, the refrain remains remarkably consistent. Excessive clutter, physical, mental, or emotional, obscures our path, while intentional, virtuous action clarifies it. This does not imply that all philosophies are identical. Each offers unique lenses for understanding reality, but it does suggest a family resemblance of themes that can reinforce your personal growth. If you are drawn to minimalism for its practical strategies in decluttering, you can bolster it with Stoic emotional regulation techniques or Buddhist mindfulness exercises. If you are intrigued by Stoicism's call to virtue and resilience, you might deepen that by exploring how Taoist Wu-Wei can reduce friction in daily life. Instead of choosing a single path to the exclusion of others, you can become a curator of wisdom, selecting elements that resonate most sincerely and combining them into a personal philosophy that supports your life circumstances. In practice, this kind of cross-pollination might look like dedicating a short time each morning to a combined routine. You might begin with a brief mindfulness meditation rooted in Buddhist tradition, calmly observing your breath and the sensations in your body. Following that, you could read a short passage from Epictetus or Marcus Aurelius and journal about how to apply their insights to the day ahead. Conclude by setting 1 or 2 minimalism-inspired intentions, perhaps to refrain from purchasing anything unnecessary or to clean a small corner of your workspace. This 15 to 20-minute sequence marries East and West, external and internal, cultivating a sense of groundedness and clarity that can guide the rest of your day. Outside of personal practice, consider exploring communities, online or local, where these ideas are discussed and applied. Minimalism groups might host swap meets or communal decluttering events, while Stoic meetups often include group readings and discussions on moral dilemmas. Eastern philosophy workshops or meditation groups can likewise provide structured guidance and shared experiences in mindfulness or Taoist principles. Engaging with others can enrich your understanding, challenge your assumptions, and offer a support network for maintaining new habits. Ultimately, these philosophies are less about rigid dogmas and more about living a life aligned with nature, virtue, and conscious choice. Whichever combination resonates with you, the fundamental invitation is to step off the treadmill of insatiable desire and unexamined reaction and instead stand in the luminous space where you can see what is essential, be it through minimalism's uncluttered environment, Stoicism's unshakable will, or Eastern detachment from grasping. The goal is a life not merely of survival, but of flourishing. To illustrate the practical side of this East meets West integration, let's consider a day-in-the-life scenario of someone incorporating these teachings. Meet Aiko, a graphic designer living in a bustling city. In the morning, Aiko starts with a 10-minute mindfulness practice, a habit adopted from Buddhist teachings. Sitting in a quiet corner of a modestly furnished apartment, Aiko focuses on the breath and acknowledges any lingering worries, deadlines, family health concerns, financial anxieties, then releases them gently. After this session, Aiko opens a journal and writes down a single Stoic reflection. Some events will be beyond my control today, but I can always choose how I respond. This line, borrowed from Epictetus, sets an emotional tone of composure. Next, Aiko glances around the living space, which follows minimalist principles. Natural light highlights a few cherished art prints and a handful of carefully chosen furniture pieces. The environment feels calming, not because it's sterile, but because everything has its place and serves a clear purpose, be it comfort, artistic inspiration, or utility. Aiko's closet features a capsule wardrobe, making the process of choosing an outfit straightforward and stress-free. While sipping morning tea, Aiko briefly reflects on the Taoist notion of wu wei, going with the flow rather than forcing it. This helps mentally prepare for the city's inevitable chaos and last-minute client requests. Throughout the workday, Aiko keeps a small notepad handy. Whenever frustration arises, perhaps a client asks for yet another revision, Aiko jots a brief note. Can't control client's request, can control my response. This technique, drawn from Stoic journaling, acts like a mental reset button. By acknowledging the dichotomy of control, Aiko avoids the spiral of resentment or stress and instead channels energy into constructive problem-solving. During a lunch break, Aiko scrolls through a curated social media feed, having unfollowed accounts that incite envy or promote rampant consumerism. This minimalistic digital approach ensures that online interactions remain purposeful, not draining. In the evening, Aiko does a quick tidying of the workspace at home, a minimalistic habit that keeps the physical environment from accumulating clutter. The day concludes with a short reading from the Tao Te Ching, focusing on a passage about balance and modesty. Aiko ponders how these principles can shape tomorrow's interactions. This reflection not only instills a sense of calm, but also fosters a deeper awareness of how personal choices ripple through professional work and social connection. This vignette demonstrates how practical minimalism, Stoicism, and Eastern teachings can coexist seamlessly. The synergy emerges in how these philosophies reinforce each other. Minimalist living reduces daily distractions, Stoic principles maintain emotional equilibrium, and Eastern meditative practices nurture self-awareness. None of these elements feel forced or extraneous. Rather, they become a cohesive system that empowers Aiko to face the city's demands with poise and a grounded sense of purpose. Whether you live in an urban metropolis or a quiet rural setting, adapting even a fraction of these practices can pave the way to a more intentional, balanced, and fulfilling life. As you consider weaving these philosophies into your own life, it is natural to encounter challenges. Old habits, accumulating items just in case, scrolling through social media aimlessly, or reacting emotionally to every setback can be deeply ingrained. Societal pressures may also tempt you back into the fold of consumerism, status-based competition, or perpetual busyness. The question becomes, how can I remain consistent with minimalism and Stoicism as enriched by Eastern insights, especially in a world that often prizes the opposite? First, remember that these philosophies are about progress, not perfection. You don't become a perfect minimalist overnight, nor does your emotional landscape transform into stoic tranquility instantly. Each small victory, resisting an unnecessary purchase, taking a mindful breath during a stressful moment, cements a habit that can be scaled over time. If you slip up, practice self-compassion, recognizing that a single lapse doesn't negate all previous gains. Second, consider setting systemic safeguards. For minimalism, this might mean a one-in, one-out rule, where any new item introduced into your space prompts the removal of a similar item. For Stoicism, a safeguard might be scheduling 5 minutes each evening to reflect on the day's emotional triggers, turning the lens of reason onto them before bedtime. If you find strength in community, you can join local or online groups where members share tips, reflect on challenges, or celebrate milestones. This communal dimension can help sustain motivation. Third, be open to adapting the principles as life circumstances change. You might find that early versions of your minimalist or stoic practice need revision once you start a family, change careers, or move to a different environment. Eastern philosophies remind us that change is the only constant, and letting go is an ongoing dance rather than a one-time action. By staying flexible, you ensure that these philosophies remain supportive rather than restrictive. Fourth, and perhaps most crucially, connect these practices to a larger purpose. If your minimalism is purely aesthetic, or your stoicism is purely about ego-driven resilience, their transformative power may remain limited. But if you see how reducing clutter frees you to spend more quality time with loved ones, or how stoic virtue aids you in contributing positively to your community, the philosophies gain emotional depth. Similarly, adopting Eastern mindfulness can heighten your sense of compassion, turning your personal self-improvement into a ripple effect, benefiting those around you. Through these steps, you gradually cultivate an integrated approach, minimalist on the outside, stoic on the inside, with a foundation in cross-cultural wisdom that orients you toward meaningful existence. Over time, you may notice that you no longer crave the transient highs of consumerism or fear the unpredictability of life with the same intensity. Instead, you carry a sense of sufficiency and emotional balance into each interaction, each decision, and each day. Ultimately, all these philosophies converge on a single overarching theme. Living well entails intentional focus on what truly matters, be that virtue, simplicity, mindfulness, or compassionate action. Where they differ, they expand one another, offering diverse tools for the multifaceted challenges of modern life. We arrive now at the culmination of our journey, a comprehensive reflection on the unified power of minimalism, stoicism, and the resonant teachings of the East. The path we've traced began with the clarion call of minimalism to shed the unnecessary, progressed to the calm resolve of stoicism in the face of adversity, and expanded further into Eastern philosophies that similarly stress letting go of attachments and living in harmony with the deeper rhythms of existence. Throughout this exploration, a consistent message has emerged. Excessive clutter, material or psychological, obscures what is essential, while intentionally paring down reveals the core of what we need to lead a meaningful life. Minimalism guided us to scrutinize how we fill our physical and digital worlds, urging us to surround ourselves only with objects and inputs that reflect our values. Stoicism called on us to develop our moral and emotional core, focusing on our own judgments and actions rather than the whims of an uncontrollable outside world. Eastern teachings illuminated complementary facets: mindfulness, effortless action, moral duty, and balanced relationships. Taken together, they form a tapestry of wisdom that speaks to the universal human quest for fulfillment and peace. In practical terms, this tapestry can manifest in endless ways, tailored to individual lifestyles. Some may transform entire homes into sanctuaries of minimalistic calm, While others may simply maintain a neat workspace and a streamlined routine, some will adopt Stoicism's mental exercises rigorously, journaling daily and practicing voluntary discomfort, while others might incorporate them more casually, perhaps recalling a favorite Stoic quote when tensions arise. And still others will intertwine meditation, yoga, or Taoist reflections with these Western influences, forging a truly eclectic personal philosophy. There is no single right formula. The beauty lies in the adaptability and universality of these teachings. Where do you go from here? One suggestion is to start small. Pick one principle that resonates most deeply, a Stoic practice, a minimalistic purge, a brief mindfulness session, and integrate it into your routine. Notice how it shifts your day, your stress levels, or your sense of alignment with your values. Then gradually add more layers, exploring new techniques and perspectives. Along the way, remain patient and reflective. Growth takes time, and the aim is not to perform a radical overnight overhaul, but to nurture a sustainable, evolving transformation. A final word of encouragement. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." The same might be said for minimalism, Stoicism, and the wisdom of the East. It's not enough to ponder these philosophies from the sidelines. Their true gifts unfold through engagement, experimentation, and wholehearted practice. As you apply these insights, you'll likely discover a deeper sense of self-reliance, compassion, and clarity. You'll become more skilled at navigating the ebbs and flows of existence, grounded in an inner stillness that no external circumstance can steal away. Thus, our exploration ends where your personal journey begins. May you walk forward equipped with the tools to cultivate a life that is simultaneously spacious and purposeful, resilient and kind, thoughtful and free, a life that not only uplifts you, but also enriches the world around you. In letting go, you gain. In simplifying, you see more clearly. In embracing what truly matters, you craft a legacy of character and contentment that transcends the fleeting nature of all else. As the final scene fades, consider this. Maybe the happiness you seek isn't found in having more, but in needing less. Perhaps true strength isn't the absence of struggle, but the calm courage to face it. By blending minimalism's mindful simplicity with Stoicism's resilient wisdom, you hold the power to rewrite your life's narrative. Less clutter, more purpose. Less stress, deeper peace. Your best self isn't buried beneath piles of possessions or tangled in anxiety. It's waiting quietly within, ready to emerge the moment you choose to let go. But every good story grows richer through shared experiences. So, tell us, how will minimalism and Stoicism shape your journey? Drop a comment below, join our growing community, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring scripts that guide you toward your most intentional, meaningful life.